You're listening to the American edition of The Voice of Russia. I'm Ric Young in Washington. On the line from Moscow, we have with us Andrei Karneev. He's a deputy director of the Institute of Asian and African Studies at the Moscow State University. Andrei, thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon.
First of all, as we have learned, a group of Japanese activists have planted a flag on a disputed island. And that, of course, China has claimed it is their island too. Why is there such controversy over these islands that both Japan and China want?
This controversy has a long history, but recently, with the discoveries of some additional oil and gas deposits underwater, the issue became even more heated, although this issue has a long history of conflicts and emotions.
So is the real issue here the fact there are minerals and valuable assets that each country wants?
And also I think that any issue relating to Chinese-Japanese territorial disputes, it always brings about memories of the Second World War, and it's very emotionally charged both in China and also in Japan.
So the emotions surrounding this event are that China still remembers Japan's occupation of China, correct?
Correct. And also it's curious that the same islands are claimed by Taiwan. And on this issue, it seems like the Taiwanese and Chinese mainland nationalists find common ground in standing together against Japanese.
Well, what kinds of things? You mentioned oil would be one of the assets this island has.
Well, surely it's oil, probably some gas. Also, if China shows weakness in this dispute, it could probably lose some ground in China's disputes with Vietnam, Philippines. So I think that the Chinese government should probably show its firmness against the Japanese claims. So it's all related. It's not an isolated case, I suppose.
Well, I was a little surprised at how passionate, how emotional the Chinese have been with this. They were in the streets. They were overturning Japanese branded cars. They were smashing windows at some Japanese-owned businesses. Why so emotional?
Well, first of all, the protests this time engulfed around 20 cities throughout China. And you're correct. In some cities, they even overturned police vehicles in these very emotional protests. It probably reminds people about similar protests which reached a peak in the year 2004 when there was a textbook controversy. And so I should remind you that these emotional outbursts, they have a long history, and over the years, we have seen a zigzag pattern of relationship going from one peak to another. So we are now seeing a peak, but we have seen such things several years ago.
Well, how do you think, or what does the future hold for this disputed island, since that whole string of islands is what's known in Japan as the Senkaku Islands, and China is the Diaoyu Islands? I mean, how do you think this kind of dispute can be settled?
Well, it's highly improbable that either side should give up or should not stand firm in this dispute. So the rational outcome should be probably to put this issue for future governments to discuss. At this moment, we see that the nationalist sentiments are on the rise in China, but they are mirrored by the same kind of outbursts in Japanese public. So the public environment for the government to find a compromise is very difficult. So I don't foresee any kind of compromise in the forthcoming months or years.
Well, how do you think this is going to affect China-Japan relations overall? Is this really a major obstacle?
Well, as I said, in the year 2004, we have seen such an outburst. And the Chinese government over the years had already showed how it could manage its public opinion. So probably we would see, so for some weeks there will be a very hot period, but then probably the emotions will a little bit go down, and the Chinese government, it could probably influence even the internet opinion. To a less extent, we could say that in Japan, but I think that after a little bit of storm and disputed, very highly emotionally charged exchanges, I think we will see a turn for a more stable dialogue between China and Japan. At least they have managed to do that in the past.
Well, apparently, according to news reports, the vice foreign minister has urged Chinese authorities to make sure that the tens of thousands of Japanese citizens in China are going to be safe. They want to make sure that the Chinese authorities are going to make sure that Japanese citizens are safe. That's still pretty serious, don't you think?
It's serious because some reports say that the Chinese government took a stimulating approach towards students protesting against Japan. So this could probably fuel some local incidents like car burning or stone throwing. I don't think that there will be human toll or any major events. Even less, we could expect some military escalation. But still, we could see some incidents or probably some patriotic demonstrations before the embassy or near some Japanese companies. So this could not be excluded. So we should probably brace for some tense period in the relationship between the two countries.
Well, briefly, Japan says it's controlled 5 main islands for more than 100 years. That's what they claim. How does China say that they own these islands too?
Well, the Chinese position is based on the claim that some 7 or 10 centuries ago, and usually the Chinese government is apt at showing some ancient maps. So it really takes to be an expert in all those difficult matters. I think that if you go into history or you put 100 history professors, and they would probably not be able to settle this issue. I think that there should be a political compromise sometime in the future. I still cannot see how it could be brokered, but it's not that if you study ancient maps, you could define or settle this very hot problem.
Is the UN involved in this?
I don't think that China would like to internationalize this issue. China will probably try to solve it in its bilateral format with Japan.
Okay.
It's peculiar that probably there could be some Chinese-Taiwanese interaction, but this still is not the UN format.
All right. Andrei Karneev, Deputy Director of the Institute of Asian and African Studies at the Moscow State University. Thank you for joining us at the American edition of The Voice of Russia.
Thank you very much for having me.
Have a good day.